Maybe there's someone you love whose gaming worries you. You see the late nights, the missed conversations, and part of you just wants to step in and shut it down. But what might it change if, before trying to fix it, you grew curious about the ache underneath? Today at the counter, I'm talking with Nathan about how gaming started filling a gap for him and how a father's quiet curiosity began to reach the heart beneath the screen. Welcome to At the Counter with the Baking Pastor. I'm Laura. Pull up a chair. There's no rush here. This season, we're sitting with the hard days, the ones that don't resolve quickly, the ones that change us in ways we didn't ask for. Here at the counter, nothing needs to be fixed. You don't have to have the right words. You don't have to have it all figured out. You can just come as you are and stay a while. This is Hard Days at the Counter. Every generation has worried about the next thing. Books, rock and roll, television, the internet, and today it's screens. But what if the screen isn't the actual problem? What if it's revealing something much deeper? Today's conversation is not about blaming technology or shaming parents. It's about understanding the human heart, because sometimes the game isn't what our children are really looking for. Sometimes it's belonging, purpose, friendship, significance, connection. And when we begin to understand the need beneath the behavior, everything starts to change. Let's pull up a chair. Today, I'm joined by Nathan Graham. Nathan is the author of Why Won't He Just Log Off? He helps parents better understand what is happening beneath gaming addiction, excessive screen time, and digital dependence. Drawing from his own experience with gaming addiction, years of studying psychology and behavioral change, and now as a husband and father, Nathan helps families move beyond constant conflict to build relationships, strengthen trust, and reconnect with their children. Nathan, thank you for joining me at the counter today.
Laura, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this since we booked it.
One thing I appreciated immediately about your book is you aren't writing from the outside looking in. You lived it. You write about calling in sick to work, losing a job, staying up all night gaming, and nearly losing important relationships. Looking back now, what was the game giving you that real life wasn't?
Yeah, I'm sure over the course of this conversation, dive into exactly what that is. I think that what was it giving me? Okay, I grew up with a very limited mindset. My parents loved me very much, but my mindset was one that really kind of held me back, that didn't dream big. If I got a union job, I would be doing really well. My father and I, we were talking about this morning. We have a great relationship now. We just didn't see eye to eye a lot growing up, as many sons and fathers do. As I went out onto my own, I moved out when I was 17. I lived in British Columbia, and my parents moved to Ontario. That's about 4 provinces or a 5-hour flight away. Nothing was really working for me. I was working factory work. I had jobs that I didn't like. I was very egocentric, I would say. I definitely was a different person back then. I blamed everybody else for my problems. And clearly it was everybody else's fault. I was amazing. I always say that when I was 17, I knew a lot more about the world than I do now. And it left a gap in me. It left me depressed. It left me unfulfilled. It left me just, I guess, raw and broken. I don't share this in the book yet. As a teenager, for example, I got picked. I do share that I got picked on. I would do cutting, and I would be suicidal as a teenager and all the rest. Really, it was a tragic story among that part. And then when I got introduced to gaming, which actually really wasn't until I was about 18, 19 years old, it started fulfilling everything. For some reason, it gave me, this is going to sound really weird to say, but it gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me something that I was good at. I strive so hard in an unhealthy way to be recognized in day-to-day life, and I never received that. And yet gaming is a place I got recognized by my peers and by my communities. So all of a sudden, when it came to my dead-end job of what I was doing, and it came to just things I hated in life, I now found fulfillment in this place. And man, I got hooked. I got very hooked on it. And that's why I started sacrificing everything for that.
When I saw the title of your book, I kind of chuckled for a minute because people who know me know I am so not a gamer. I do know the name Minecraft and some of the other, I know them, but I don't game. There are no game apps on my phone. We do not own a console. The only games you will find anywhere near us are board games like Scrabble, Risk, those kind of things. At first, I was like, wow, okay, games. And then I look around as my husband and I are at lunch, and how many people in a restaurant, and you do mention this at some point, that technology needs to not be in mealtime. And we'll go out after church for lunch, and there'll be a table with 2 adults and 4 kids and 6 devices.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a restaurant sitting together. You're after church. Why aren't you discussing the sermon? And I just think, wow. And so when I read the book, I kept thinking, this doesn't feel like it's only about gaming, as I thought when I saw the title. I kept thinking adults disappear at work, right? We've got social media, achievement, maybe people who have shopping addictions, busyness. Do you ever think the conversation is really about understanding what every human heart is searching for?
Absolutely. One of the biggest examples I think I use in the book is when I was in high school. Again, ironically, I grew up in a home without games. We weren't allowed to have consoles. I think we had an Atari and we played Pong, and that was it. So for me to get addicted to gaming after I left it was kind of a crazy thing. Yet in grade 8, I got bullied a fair bit and life wasn't great. So I used to rush home. And what I talk about in the book is I might not have had video games, but I had Legos and Star Wars. I literally locked myself in a room with Legos and Star Wars. And I played Legos and watched those movies over and over. As you can see on my screen, I'm still a Star Wars fan. I built custom lightsabers with my daughter. I love Star Wars. But that became my world. And it started fulfilling my needs of, and I guess we might as well dive into it, the core human needs of certainty, of adventure, of significant love and connection were being fulfilled by Legos and Star Wars. Then my father saw a problem and he basically came to me and said, son, you're playing a sport. I don't care what one, you're playing a sport. You can pick it, but you're playing a sport. So I chose to play football. And what ended up shifting was those needs started to be fulfilled in football. That became a center focus of accomplishment, of significance, of certainty, of adventure, and of my love and connection with my team. At the time it was, looking back, that's the aha moment, is when I look at video gaming, and then afterwards, it was fulfilling those exact same needs. I use video games as the example because it's a conversation that I find a lot of parents are struggling to understand, and a lot of people who aren't involved in the world just don't get it. So I thought it was a really good topic. Yet the reality is, all things that we do in life go to fulfilling these needs in one form or another. Laura, us doing this podcast is fulfilling a need of love and connection. It's fulfilling a need of significance. Now, we're not doing it for this selfish reason, but it's a way of fulfillment, right? And so when we live in a society that's massively lacking those needs, so you talk about the family at the table, when you live in a society that's lacking those needs, it doesn't change the desire for them. It just changes the avenues to go fill them, because we are going to go fill them whether we're conscious of it or not. What I'm kind of curious about, and obviously we can only speculate, but that family at the table on those devices, what is the device giving them that their family at that moment isn't?
We wondered the same thing, and we could kind of see a couple of the kids were playing games, which was boys, and the girls were on Instagram, one was on Facebook, and they were turning their phone to share. The dad was on a poker site, and I couldn't see what the mom was doing. But nobody, other than when the waitress walked up, there was no talking, none. They didn't talk other than the girls would they'd like elbow each other and point to the screen. And that was it. There was no blessing. There was no nothing. They ate, they put their screens down and kind of continued to eat while screening, and then got up and left. There was no discussion. And I kept thinking, y'all are missing connection.
Yeah.
Missing connection. It was
ironically, they're probably gaining it though. And these needs get fulfilled in a healthy or unhealthy way, but they're getting fulfilled. Right now, as I said, I'm working on my second project of really deep diving into these needs. And although I wrote this book from a father perspective and from a male gamer, that's the only reason why I use masculine pronouns in it. I didn't grow up as a woman, so I can't tell you what it was like to be a young girl in society. I have a daughter now who's 7, so I'm learning. Yet it's interesting to watch my daughter and how she looks for love and connection among her peers and her friends and with mom and everything else. We never specifically put out to raise a girly or a tomboy. We just imparted wisdom and saw where it goes. The other day, my daughter was so proud of coming in with her nails done. My wife is not a big makeup person. She'll wear makeup when we go out, but she's not obsessed by looks. It's not something we do. And she just loved that her nails were done and she felt pretty with it, right? And I thought to myself at this moment, man, if she had Instagram, these would be on Instagram right now. And it would now go into the comparative world. But it's the way she thinks she's connecting with the world out there. In a family where you don't have the loving connection amongst each other, or I'll just say connection, because usually there's love, but when you don't have that connection, that daughter at the table is getting it through Instagram, or the son at the table is getting his significance through that game and being good at it, or the father at poker, right?
You had a sentence in the book. You said the game is the symptom, it's not the disease. Can you unpack that? Because I think that's really profound.
Yeah, we like to treat the symptoms. I like to think about this. I sometimes think about this when I hear and I get surprised by so and so cheated on somebody in a marriage or a relationship. We often focus on the sin of cheating, and it is grave. I'm not by any means downplaying it. It breaks trust and all the rest. Yet our focus often goes on the person who did the cheating, what was wrong. And when we start to unpack what that looks like, we actually find out that there was deeper issues running through the relationship. That the reality is that person cheating, and ironically what I know now, we're trying to fulfill those same needs they weren't getting. So it's something bigger. Well, the same thing is happening here in gaming. We often see the game, and I think there's a generational gap where we think of it like TV. I remember watching too much TV as a kid. My parents could just shut it off and that entertainment's done, and it sucked. We might have thought about it, but I can restart it again tomorrow. Gaming is different. It's fulfilling these core needs in a lot of young people today. And so when we just go ahead and shut it off, we're actually just ripping off a symptom. What we're basically doing is saying your place of getting significance, your place of getting adventure, love, and connection, of certainty, and all the rest, we're just going to rip that out of your life. And it's literally just ripping it out of their life. And then we're not replacing it. If you could snapshot that moment of having this young person left with this void that needs to be filled, and they have no idea how to fill it, that is where they're sitting at and what they're left with. And you just became, as a parent, the person who ripped that away. Right. So when I say that we're dealing with a symptom, or why gaming is a symptom, is because there is that void. And the question is, why is the game fulfilling that void? Why is it being fulfilled in an unhealthy manner versus a healthy manner? I will fully admit I still game today, but just in a very, very different way at a very high level. And I learn the positive sides of what can come out of that, because there are some very big positives. But you get left with this void. And then the question is, why do they feel the necessity of filling that void with the game? And how can we contribute to that? How can we contribute in helping them fill that?
One of the things you said was by pulling the plug on the game, their game time is not ending, but they're often letting the guild or the group that they play with, I learned all kinds of new terminology, thank you, that they're letting this mission you were on and these people down that people may have looked up to because they had gotten to a certain rank or level in the game. I had never even put the two together because, again, don't game. I mean, I've heard their levels, and I know sometimes people are like, I just learned how to get to blah, blah, blah. Do you want to know the secret? And I chuckle. I mean, I have occasionally at people's houses played a game or two of Mario Brothers and maybe Asteroids.
Yeah.
Old type, nothing that would be like a major conquest. But and then I started looking at the box we have with the Risk game. You play with an army and you go out and you're going to go attack other countries. And I thought, so, okay, same skills. We're still learning leadership. We're learning strength and endurance because gaming seems to take a long time. And those are things I would have never put two and two together before reading your book.
Yeah, I love that you bring that part up because I think that's a big aha moment for a lot of people. Because if you think about the social dynamics of it, I'm sitting there helping 5 other people accomplish a goal. And if we're halfway through that goal and you tear it, well, first of all, who loves going back to that community feeling like you just failed everybody, right? And sure, it's out of your control, but these are also teenagers you're playing with as well, young adults. They still blame the world. They're not exactly on growth mindset trajectories of full acceptance. It's a judgmental world that we live in, unfortunately. And then you look at, someone else brought this up. I actually haven't really pieced this together, but then look at the group. As they're trying to fulfill their core needs, they need stability, adventure, significance. And now I no longer fit into their vision of what they're looking for. Then I get rejected or ostracized from my group of people, which I was doing some research recently on why solitary confinement is so horrible for prisoners. And getting rejected from a community and removed from one is just, it's one of the most devastating things that can happen to a human being, right? Now, teenagers, it's interesting. As adults, we've been through this. I like to call this participatory knowledge. We don't just have it as book knowledge, we've participated in it. We've hopefully created healthy or unhealthy ways of dealing with it. So if we were to get rejected by a group tomorrow, we'd probably figure out a way about it or find a way to blame them or whatever case, like we can make do with it. But I had this other weird aha moment as I'm expanding this idea that teenagers are experiencing this for the first time. They don't have participatory knowledge yet. They only have smart knowledge. They only know and heard of this concept of rejection and that it's bad, but they haven't participated in what it's like to actually be rejected yet. And it sounds weird that our parents by the way, I really want to talk about how not to feel guilty as a parent because I feel like I'm really busting on parents right now. But as parents who are supposed to be our support, our guidance, a source of love and connection, just forced us to be rejected by the community. I want to be clear. We have to set boundaries, guidelines. I'm definitely not saying, and I hope I convey this in the book, I'm not saying you have to let them play for 24 hours a day and do whatever they want. Yet, I believe connecting with them on that level and understanding goes a lot way in mending the fence.
I think boundaries in general should be set. Like you talked about having a place for technology to be parked at night. Because we all know that blue screens will keep people up later. It resets pathways in their brain, and they're already struggling with a lot of stuff, junk they're carrying. And if all these other things are keeping them up, well, then they're going to worry about that. But why can't we have a time of no technology, like not at a meal or park them in a certain place? I know you said you can't really say how long to play because you can't control that and you would be pulling the plug. But I think one of the lines was, I'd like you to start your last game no later than 8 p.m.
Yes.
And I thought, how odd. Okay. So you roughly know how long they take, but then also getting buy-in, which on a boundary with a kid, absolutely. Do you want to stay out later or you want to go to so-and-so's house? I want to meet their parents. A little give and take. When I taught, if the kids set the rules, they kept them every time.
Yes.
I set the rules. So the trick was getting them to set rules they would live by. And they loved it. I love that you said it from a gamer point of view because, okay, parents, we do need negotiation. It's a good skill in life to have anyway. And boundaries need to be set that are healthy and okay with both parties. We don't want it to feel like someone's winning more than the other.
What I love about the boundaries conversation is, yes, I love what you just said there. We seem to reject other people's boundaries set on us, yet we actually crave and strive for boundaries. Look at my daughter's now 7, but I remember when she was 2, when she was 3, we called her a three-nager because she puts boundaries left, right, and center. She wanted to see how far things would go. Yet the interesting part, she needed to know. If we let her just keep pushing and never find a boundary, she would be lost and she would have no idea how to operate or act in this environment. By pushing those boundaries, my daughter, you could see her trying to figure out the quote unquote, the rules of our environment, right? I learned something else, and I wish I could cite all these. I have to research to cite them. I just remember learning them, that a teenager is actually very similar to 2 and 3 and 4 years old. They're beginning to push these boundaries, except the difference is they've learned their boundaries of home. Now they need to understand it about the world. So if we don't have set guidelines, if that teacher in class doesn't have the curb, like I call them wide roads, high curbs, this is the curb, this is what you cannot pass, then they have no idea how to dictate that. It's like giving your kid 100 things to wear and then being like, make a decision in 5 minutes. Good luck with that. Yet if you give them 2 or 3 things, they can make a decision quite well. The 2 or 3 things is the rule and the boundaries. We as parents, it seems to be this generational thing from my parents to my generation to our kids. We somehow see rules and boundaries as a bad thing, not realizing that we all need to understand the rules to play the game. And then when we understand the rules, so the reason why you like to use wide roads, high curbs is because the curbs are the boundaries and we cannot go past those. Yet the road is where she has all the freedom in the world. We don't dictate necessarily how she plays in that road. We don't dictate the type of things she should do. We just guide her in that road and let her have her sense of adventure, her sense of growth, her sense of pushing boundaries within that, right? So going back to what we're talking about, if we know their last event is going to take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, just say, okay, start your last event by 8. We're going to aim for finishing at 8:30, right? That's the road. The curb is 8:30. The road is you have 30 minutes left. I'm giving you the warning, wrap it up. And now they have control in their world, which allows them to push their boundaries and limits at the same time while having them. So I guess my whole point is I'm definitely not advocating to get rid of rules and boundaries. As a matter of fact, human beings crave them. We crave structure and we need it to survive.
I taught in an alternative school for a couple years, and I quickly realized they were going to need structure. They got lots of love and attention for doing the right things. And then they didn't get the love or the attention when they did the wrong things. So we had rules. And I realized that based on how some of these kids were raised, it was even something as simple as one example. One kid popped open a bag of Cheetos. Another kid had just come back from the bathroom. And he goes, "No, I better not. I didn't wash my hands." And the whole class kind of looked at him and went, "You went to the bathroom and you didn't wash your hands? Ew. Okay, here's my pass. Go back to the bathroom. Wash your hands. Wash my pass. Wash your hands again, and then come back and have a Cheeto." And you're just thinking, okay, so there was no structure at home. But when I gave them structure and even reversed it, like, you were starting with an A. If you lose points, that's on you. But you're starting with an A and you can keep an A. And in some cases, these kids had never had an A, didn't know what an A was, kept questioning, "Are you sure I still have an A? Really? Yes, you've done this, this, and this. You've got an A." And they love the structure. And I think without it, especially when we've got a lot of parents now who are hands off because their parents were so hands on, we've got a whole generation of many little disasters that are going to be coming at us pretty soon when we ask for something to happen and they have a breakdown.
And man, I love these examples you're bringing up. It's just getting the gears going. Because I'm looking at that washing of hands things too. Here's something that our generation seems to do as well, is for some reason we want to shun all parts of society as if a structured society is bad. And one of the root causes and problems is we have turned to self, an internal self, as a source of truth versus an external source of truth. But when the truth was external, you and I had similar values. And so we actually had consistency in our life as well. And culture had a consistency in life. Well, this young boy who didn't wash his hands, like, the amount I feel for him because his parents aren't teaching him societal values to fit in. They actually just in their, and again, this is a lot of assumption and judgment, and I try to stay away from that, but I'm going to assume in the ideal way of setting up a more of a free spirited, less rule, less structures, they've now taught him how to be ostracized from society by not washing his hands and by admitting it. And so one of the big things too is I find is to start looking outwardly to what that goes on. Is I do believe our job as parents is not just to prepare our kids for their own life and growth, yet you have to teach them how to be a functioning body of society. So like one of the goals with my daughter, albeit right or wrong, some people will love it and some people will hate it. And I will tell you, you do you for your kid. Yet one of my goals is for her to be liked by adults. When she goes to church, I want adults to engage with her. I want her to understand that we're not asking a billion questions is annoying. I remember before I was a parent, I used to say the most naive thing. I'm never going to stop my kid from asking questions. I want them to learn. Oh my goodness, I was so silly, right? Because now I'm like, kid, just figure it out, right? I want them to be a functioning part of society, right? And to do that, sometimes you have to understand the rules of society. You have to understand washing your hands is a good thing.
Well, I think in that particular case, both parents kind of alternated spending time incarcerated, and he drifted in amongst other houses. When I realized that what I would consider foundational stuff was not there, I backed up and we learned. And again, I was in California at that time, so there wasn't a whole lot of Southern. There wasn't a lot of ma'am and sir, but we addressed each other. We held chairs out. I made them take their hats off. I taught rival gangs and I made them take their hats off. And they're like, I'm like, I'll put a mirror up so you can go pull your pants back down and fluff your hair back up. I don't care. But in my class, I want your pants up and your hat off. And they thought it was odd, but they agreed. And yes. I said, once you cross that door, that threshold, you're mine. You are no longer part of a gang. You're not going to beat each other up in my classroom. Once you cross over, and please cross over, so I don't have like a ton of paperwork, then y'all can beat each other up. And they did. Every weekend they were rival and they'd beat each other up. But then they'd come in on Monday mornings and they'd be fist bumping and hugging and couldn't let the other people know that they were tight with each other in class. But it was just foundation stuff that I would have thought we knew. But once we set the foundation and the structure, anybody new that joined our class then got through the same indoctrination, if you will, to learn this is how we do things. When you come in, you punch in on a time clock. There is no arguing that you're late. The time clock doesn't lie. We did things to teach them. When you go to work, you're going to have to punch in on a time clock. And if you're late, you may get docked. There's time for eating. There's time for not. There's time for socializing. And it's just not a free for all. The principal came to me one day and he said, "Are these people really here now?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Can I look?" And he opened and peeked in and he said, They skipped all of their morning classes and they're here. And I said, yeah. He goes, okay, I want to check back tomorrow. I'm like, okay. They skipped all their afternoon classes too. Mine was the only one they came to. And he asked them, he came in the next day. He said, why? And they said, because this is the only place we feel we get treated fairly.
Amazing.
And that was such a shock for him and for me.
And how beautiful is that? Like, so going back to the core needs of needing certainty in life, so many of us, we live such a blessed life in Canada where our certainty need just seems to be automatically fulfilled. We always know there's a roof over our head. We know there's going to be food on the table. Like, certainty isn't exactly a big concern of ours. As a matter of fact, adventure is a far more bigger concern. Where am I going to go on a vacation? Here you have these young group of potentially bubbling awesome people who have no certainty in life. And all you do, and all you've really created through that is a sense of certainty, a sense of, I know what is expected of me and I know what to expect. And flourishing, like the foundation of flourishing begins to happen. I love that. What a great way to go there. Love it.
As I read your book, of course, Jesus is like with me all day, every day. He is my best friend. I talk to him all through the day. And as I was reading, I was like, through the Gospels, Jesus consistently looked beneath people's behaviors. He looked for the need of what was really going on, especially like Mary and Martha, what was really going on. And before he corrected someone, he would notice them, the woman at the well or the woman throwing no stones. But before he taught, he listened. Before he changed lives, he built that relationship. And I think that's what you were saying is missing in a lot of the chapters, that they're missing. Not just that they're not parents with kids, they are people in relationships or broken relationships. And that they started focusing on changing behavior before asking what they were really missing. And I love you gave like a series of 3 questions that parents could ask to, instead of, did you win? Because again, that's a yes or no. But what'd you work on today? Or who was on the game? Who was online with you? And you're trying to get to know that child again and pull them back out of the shell. But I love that. That's pulled directly from the Gospels, and you highlighted that for parents. Can you speak a little bit about why it's important to rebuild that relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I want to go back. We talked a little bit about this off screen, but to talk about it on screen is a lot of what I do talk about does have a faith foundation to it. And I agree. When you look at a relationship with Christ and you look at the Gospels, when you look at the commandments around forgiveness and Romans, and I love Romans, by the way, it's probably one of my favorite books, you see these foundational principles all through it. Rebuilding that connection, though, it is so important because that's something we've lost. On a religious background I don't get to talk about very often, is that something that was taken away from us in the Garden of Eden. Is literally we had this perfect relationship, sin enters the world and we no longer have it, and we're always striving to get it back. And it's interesting when you watch humanity, it's like we're always trying to fulfill that God-shaped hole in our heart. Well, the same sort of idea is happening here with your kids. And it's just weird tug of war. As a teenager, you think your parents have all the answers and they are like this source of strength. And as a parent, there are days I'm like, I can't even believe somebody in the world will let me be responsible for a 7-year-old. As a parent, we are still struggling with these same things, ironically, as a lot of times we did with a teenager. We're a lot more alike than we are different. When I started looking at the difference between a young child going into teenage years, it was like, up until about 11, 12 years old, as a parent, you are the source of these needs. Then everything starts to shift. And all of a sudden, the world starts to become a source of these needs. And this is a hard thing for parents. We feel like we're losing our best friends almost because my daughter is my friend. I enjoy her company. I love hanging out with her. I discipline her, but I love hanging out with her. It's almost like I'm losing this now to the world. Yet, as a parent, my role is now going to shift to, I'm no longer the source of fulfillment of these needs. I am now the guide to show them how to get it positively. So my dad, when he got me into football, he wasn't fulfilling my needs, yet he guided me into what would fulfill those needs. And to the teenagers listening to this, I want to let you know, as a parent, that's a very hard thing to do, to let you go and make your mistakes, let you learn what a broken heart is and struggle and find out how to fulfill that properly. And as a teenager, we have to understand that that's what they're going out to find. Talking on those 3 questions, I want to go back to those 3 questions because this is an exercise I love doing. If you are struggling with that connection with your kid, the 3 deep questions help out a lot. Now, do you want to have some fun and role play these with me? Okay. So I love doing this because I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. And a little bit of the human nature says you're going to be different, but you won't. You're going to respond the same way everybody does because it almost forces the way we go down it. So what I love about the 3 deep questions is the first answer you give me is the answer that you think is actually the truth. The second answer you give me is the truth you think I want to hear. And the third answer you give me will actually be the truth. So I'm going to tell you this and we're going to have some fun. So if I say, Laura, we'll role play this. Why authentically, why did you start this podcast?
Because God told me to.
Because God told you to. Amazing. Okay, great. And so that tells me that you have a willingness to serve God. And when you serve God, what does that bring you in your life?
It means I don't get doinked or he doesn't send me down into the fiery pit.
So you get to avoid hell, it doesn't send you in the fire pit. I'm going to break here because I want to expand off that just a little bit. The fiery pit, though, of serving God. Actually, no, let's just do the third question. So the fiery pit is obviously a place that we would physically be sent to, but it's also hardships in life at the same time. So by serving God and by being certain of your salvation, how does that affect and change your day-to-day life?
I spend time in the Word. I know what He expects of me, and I go forth and do what He expects. And I get the little directional corrections, as I call them, God doinks when He doesn't like which way I'm going.
Awesome. Okay. So we went from this basic idea of I just serve God, which could mean a lot of things, right? To this as actually becoming a part of a guiding foundation for how you dictate your life. This is what feeds into your certainty, but into your sense of adventure in life. Because by serving God, you help this correction of basically seeing, needing, and understanding. Like it's a guiding light in life that a lot of people lack. Would that be accurate, do you think?
I think they may feel they lack it only because they don't recognize what it is in their life.
Fair, right. So the point is I want to get to is I now know a lot more about you and why you do this, right? And these answers could have went anywhere. I remember my first time doing this. I sell real estate. I've been a real estate broker for 16 years, and I taught a lot of new agents. I remember my first 3 deep in a class, I asked them, well, how come you got into real estate? And this lady puts up her hand. She goes, to make money. And I say, fantastic. Okay, great. So making money, what does that do for you in your life? And she goes, it gives me freedom. I can travel. I can buy the cars that I want. I can go out and do things. And I'm like, amazing. And by being able to have that freedom and go out and do things, what does that do for you? And she looked at me and she goes, in front of a whole class, she goes, it allows me to never borrow another damn penny from my husband ever again. And you couldn't help but laugh because here, if we were to stop at, I do this to make money, man, we could have been like, she's greedy, she's selfish. She's not. The reality is she faced day to day in a prison and she no longer wanted to be in that prison. And what a huge different motivating factor to do things in life. So in the building of that reconnection, this is why I think it's so important to reconnect with your kids is the surface answer they give you is not going to usually be the truth. It'll be what they think the truth is. It's their easy truth. By going deep, you really figure out what they're fulfilling through this.
You have a line that your child is not broken and neither are you. And I think exhausted parents and grandparents need to hear those words and know we are not trying to shame parents or grandparents. We are just sharing facts, experiences. But why do you think it's important for parents or grandparents to begin that it's okay where they are?
Because it's hard. My parents used to say there was no such thing as a manual for parenting. And now, unfortunately, there's way too many manuals for parenting. So I'm just trying to debate on how far I want to go with this. Are you okay if I go a little bit far with this? I feel for mothers, especially today, and women in general today. I feel for men a lot too, but I talk a lot about men on a lot of these podcasts. So I really want to specifically talk about this. I observe my wife and my sister-in-law. They can do nothing right. They get this advice and do something as a mother, and they find 15 articles telling them they're wrong. And then they do the opposite, and 10 of their friends tell them how they shouldn't have done that. And then women today are told you can do anything you want completely independent from the world, which is true, by the way. Women have the capability to do whatever you want. That really isn't the question. The question is it healthy? Is it healthy to do that without a partner in life? I can tell you as a husband, the most fulfilling thing in my life is my wife. I shouldn't say that as a Christian, God is, but I mean, on this level, my wife is this huge source of fulfillment. And although can I do this world alone? Sure, but this world would suck a whole lot more. Yet as a mother in today's world, you're told you don't actually need a husband or you don't need a partner. You can do it on your own. And this is a lot of weight to put on our shoulders. Your kid, first of all, their behavior is not a result of you being just a bad parent. Their behavior, and that's what we're told. We're told that it's just us being bad parents. Their behavior is also a result of them growing and them becoming human beings. That is something out of our control. And actually being an amazing parent is letting that process develop, even though sometimes they're going to be hurt and in pain. And you as a parent, man, it is exhausting. and we fail all the time. Like, I know these things, I study these things, and my wife will often look at me and be like, how come you're not taking your own advice? I fail as a dad. My kid right now, just to give me some peace and quiet for this podcast, is in the room playing iPad. I understand that screen time is that sometimes that break that we need. And I definitely don't want to sit in judgment and say don't do it, because it is hard. We are exhausted. We are expected to provide. We're expected to be at literally everything. Somehow we have to be a best friend and a disciplinary person and all the rest. The goal in this is, if you're striving to be the perfect parent, you're just striving for anxiety. That's it. And it is not going to happen. You're setting yourself up for unrealistic expectations. Allow yourself to fail. Failure is easily one of the best building blocks we have in life. We don't, even on a psychological level, over 80% of the people learn from loss far greater than they learn from gain. Allow yourself to fail. It is going to happen, and fail with grace and fail with forgiveness. You are listening to these podcasts. You are engaging in these conversations. You are doing far more than what the average person is already doing to be a better parent, a better mom, a better dad. Forgive yourself and treat yourself from grace, and understand that we're just failing forward. That tomorrow, our goal isn't to be perfect. Our goal is just to hopefully be slightly better than we were today. And we're going to take these 3 deep questions, and we're going to take some of these goal setting exercises. And maybe you have these big aha and revelation moments through this, and kudos. I hope that you do. I hate to tell you, you're not going to follow them perfectly. I read a stat one time. It takes the average person 8 attempts to quit smoking before they actually do. If they stop at 6 because they failed, they never quit. Don't stop. Just keep going. And it's hard. Forgive yourself. Live with grace. Allow yourself permission to have your own time. My wife and I are very clear with our daughter on our own quiet time. There's times we let her stay out here and play while we go watch TV in the room, because we make our quiet time clear. And have a partner, man. To the husbands out there, there's something weird that happens on a relationship when we have kids. It is a very bad explanation. It is like we are the center of the world in a marriage until we have kids, and then we become secondary to the kid. And that's normal, and that's good. Our role is no longer to be center in a marriage. Our role is now to support our wives. We don't understand what they carry. They don't always understand what we carry, but they carry it in a very different way. Support your wives. And wives, rely on your husbands. Let them know where you need help. They are also going to be broken, and they're also going to be failures, and they are going to mess this up. I am not a perfect husband by any means. Yet every once in a while, I know how, like, I don't understand why my wife needs a house clean. I do not get it. I do not care. What I do understand, though, is it drives her brain crazy when it's not. So today she's at work, and before she comes home, I'm going to ask my daughter and I, we're going to clean and organize the house. Not because I understand it, not that I get it, because it helps her. And by doing that, it rejuvenates her. So rely on each other, find partners. We're not designed to be in this world alone. So I tell you, you're not broken, your kid's not broken, because we're not. We're sinful human beings that fail and struggle, and just make the goal to be a bit better tomorrow and keep growing. Love and compassion come from love and compassion.
Another line you had in the book was, never remove the game without replacing the need.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've kind of skirted and touched it several times. I think what you're saying is, we can't just say you're no longer on it, because that's their world, that's their guild, that's their leadership, their importance, their value. What would be one tip that a parent could do to start rebuilding what they need before they could replace it?
I would say enter their world. This is kind of going back to the difference between participatory knowledge and book knowledge. So, for example, we all know how a chair works. We all know it has 4 legs, it has a seat, it has a back. Yet, if you ever have an opportunity to chat with a woodworker and a chair builder, they're going to give you a very different experience about it, because they participate in the building of the chair. When your son or daughter is addicted to the screen time, to the social media, to the video games, you have the ability to engage in their world. They do not have the ability to engage in adult world yet. You have the ability to remember what it was like to be a teenager. They do never experience what it was like to be an adult. Sit down with them and ask them questions. Come from curiosity instead of judgment. Try to figure out where these needs are, because when you figure out what that need is, we actually start fulfilling that. So I'll give you an example. My dad hated video games as I grew up, or as I was a young adult, because he saw what they did in my life. I was losing relationships. I was losing jobs. It was not a good, healthy thing. And he blamed the game without understanding. Well, now games play a different role in my life. We learn leadership skills. We can learn, I've used things in job interviews. I've learned how to research. At one point, I even hired a coach. I wanted to be better at the game for my guildies and to get better for my own personal thing. So I literally hired a coach. It was fun. It was like this 21-year-old European kid. I recorded my screen. We watched replays. We talked about rotations and we dissected it the same way you dissect a play in a football game or something like that. And it was a really cool experience. That was a very positive thing to take away from gaming, by the way, because I have business coaches now and I hire coaches in my business world. Well, I told my dad about this, and my dad was so intrigued by the coaching that he asked me more. And this is the first time gaming was such a big part of my life for so many years now. And this was in my 30s, by the way. This was the first time he ever entered into my world. And I can tell you, I had never felt so significant to my dad and so much love and connection as that moment. Now, he does not love the video game. It did not like he changed his point of view of what was happening or the game I was playing. Yet he loved my growth in the game. And that actually started to replace that need for love and connection and significance of the game and brought it back into our relationship, which was a really good feeling all around. You don't have I guarantee you in the gaming, like we talked a little bit about it before with Risk, there is something going on with your teenager that is so much deeper that I think you could be really proud of. My dad might not be proud of my gaming, but he was proud of my dedication. He was proud that I coached. He was proud that I was humble enough to find support, proud enough to analyze. Like these are all great skills of life. So when we dive in and connect with them, there is something there we can connect with. It's just a matter of finding it. But there is something there we can connect with for sure.
You've mentioned strength and perseverance, and there's so many skills that kids can learn from games that they don't know. I would incorporate board games in my classroom to teach my students because they thought Monopoly was just a thing until they realized, or the game of when you suddenly had someone that had to pay insurance or you had a wreck. Games really allowed them a chance to, run up, like you said, the high curbs and go, hey, wait a minute, this is not where I need to be. And so
Yeah.
I think there's so many good things that can come from games that are done within moderation and with respect with parents and kids involved.
Yeah, like a few quick studies and a quick observation that I'd never really thought about is one right now, especially in the school system, young boys that are being taught history, like proper history through video games, are retaining what they learn at a higher level than learning it through a textbook. They did a study on surgeons, and surgeons that in university and college that played video games had a higher success rate and less complications in surgeries than ones who didn't, due to the development of what they believe to be hand-eye coordination. Yet there's something interesting about human beings. We possess the ability to play out multiple scenarios in our head before we do something. And it's a skill that we don't talk about. It's a skill that we don't hone. Yet it's weird. We can sit back and be like, okay, so I'll give you an example. You have a sermon to preach on Sunday. You don't know if you should preach or not. Maybe it's one of those ones you're feeling called to preach, but you're very nervous about. Well, you can start playing all the different realities in your head. You can play out, what is it like to preach it and they all hate it? What is it like to preach it and they all love it? Right? And you can start playing out all these scenarios and you can prep yourself now for any future scenario that comes into gaming. Also has this ability to do that if they're being guided and supported in a healthy way. I loved what you just said about climbing the curbs. It allows them to climb the curbs without danger. What happens? This is going to be a ridiculous example, but I'll use it. If I jump off this building in a game and I fall and die, I can relate that to life. Maybe that's my way of playing out I shouldn't jump off a building in real life, right? In a lot of games, there was a movie out recently about NASCAR, and I think it was NASCAR, Formula One, and it was keyed around a gamer that learned how to drive through a game called Gran Turismo that was so realistic, he was able to adapt the strategies to real life, and he ended up winning races with those same strategies. And this is a perfect example. In the game, this is no longer allowed, by the way, in racing, but in the game, they had this strategy that was so realistic that if you were about to lose, you could punch the gas pedal, you could ride your car along the outer side of the wall. It would destroy your car, but because you didn't have to steer and you can just punch the gas, it actually caused you to win races. This is something you would never in a million years try on your own. And then one day someone did it in a game, they started winning races, and then someone did it in real life. You can Google it. Someone actually does this Gran Turismo move in real life and goes from like second last to second in the race. So here it's giving a field to go practice things on. So there is this positive avenue of gaming that if we understand and we can help hone within our youth, we can turn this into a positive experience that they can take into life lessons.
Yeah. I think that's important because everything we do has the opportunity to cross over. A lot of metaphors I use on the podcast or in my counseling revolve around baking because most people understand bread or they've heard of yeast, and that we can have a dough working because a lot of people are doers, but they don't see what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden there's a loaf of bread that's done and they didn't see the yeast doing anything either. And so we can learn lessons from things that we don't necessarily intend to. And those will stick with us often way longer because they're so unique and different.
Actually, man, you're making me think of all these things that I kind of don't talk about nearly enough. I love it. There's actually something really fascinating about the English language. I used to hate the English language because I was like, oh, we only have one word to describe love and this and that. And then someone once said, though, and this is, I've learned to be very true, the English language will always be superior because it allows us to think in metaphors and pictures. It allows us to articulate very complex issues and into something like bread or into something like gaming. And this is something we take for granted because language is the foundation to intelligence. If we can't articulate something, we can't envision it, then we can't grow off of it. We are so blessed to have this ability of the English language, which does not, my wife knows Chinese, and this does not exist in Chinese. It's a pictorial language. It's a metaphorical language. What I love about what you just talked about is we can literally learn anything from anything because our language allows us to connect it. So you're absolutely correct. That baking of bread, that's what you do. And to you, it's not just a baking of bread, I would imagine, but you are learning life lessons about.
Well, you think about cooking, and I used this when I worked with my alternative kids. We got kicked out of our room because it had tables in the way they needed to do testing. And the principal said, Laura, you're going to need to move the kids to the home ec room. And I thought, you do realize there's knives and equipment and stoves in there? And he looked at me really funny, and I said, I'll come up with a game plan. He goes, oh, by the way, you're going to be there all week. And I thought, I was in an occupational district that supported 6 high schools. So I went back to my boss and I said, I need $30 to buy ingredients to bake because next week we're getting booted out of our room and we're going to be in the home ec room. And if you don't want any issues or the police being called, we need to be doing something creative. And he said, I need a lesson plan first. We learned hygiene, math, following directions, and I had a whole list of stuff. So I came back the next day. I'm like, here you go. And he gave me $50. He goes, buy extra. We made cookies. We mixed up the dough. We learned some people can follow directions and get a really nice, soft, fluffy dough. And then we had a group that threw everything together and it was hard. And the next day they remade another dough. We rolled it out and baked it. Some people learned that cooking, you can just throw stuff in and it works. Baking's a science.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people's stuff was bubbling and doing things it wouldn't, but we even turned it into marketing. A friend of mine had one of those companies that does cookie bouquets. She came out and showed them how to decorate and told them about marketing and what they could do. And then the kids got to sell their cookie creations at lunch on the last day. The principal walked by and he said, I can't believe they learned all of this baking.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it's a life skill and it's important. And I wish more teachers would use more creative lessons because I never had kids in the wrong corner during that whole week in this ginormous kitchen with 17 kids. They were focused on what was next, who was in charge, who was using the mixer, who even knew what a plug was, how to run a mixer. And no, you don't hold it up in the air with stuff coming off of it. You learn how to clean up, but they enjoyed the hands-on learning. And I think more schools would benefit from that. But I mean, to me, that's meeting the kids what they need. We had to move. There was going to be a potential for really bad behaviors.
Yeah.
And hands-on kept them focused, engaged. Plus they got the benefit of snacking and worked. But I think that's what you're saying partially with the game. If the parents meet the kids where they are and can help fill in the holes and the gaps, being in a new environment like off the game, or in my case, in a new classroom, then they're able to better maneuver in that environment because of the safeguards we put in. Now, I will say I did go in the day before and removed all the big knives. Just
Smart idea.
And sure enough, they all looked in the drawers and they noted they were gone. But then they said thank you because they might have been tempted. And I was like, wow. I mean, that to me is like living in a whole different place in your head. But they at least looked. And part of it was, I think they were afraid of the other kids who were going to stab them. And then some of them were afraid that I was going to get stabbed. And I thought, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Everything is gone and we're good.
So there's
And
actually an important analogy I want to drive from that because I love that, removing the big knives, right? I would actually still encourage that in the video game world too, because I remember sitting in Walmart one time and I was looking at buying a game for myself. It was around Christmas time. And these two parents looked at me and said, "You look like you know games. Do you think our son would like Call of Duty?" And I'm like, "Oh, how old's your son?" And they said, 7 years old. And I'm like, "Well, do you want him shooting people in the face and swearing his face off?" No. I'm like, "Well, it's probably not the best game." There's 2 points I would definitely say. There are games, yes, you can learn from all games, but there are games for a certain age group. Grand Theft Auto is not a game for a 12-year-old. There are a lot of great games that they can learn a lot of good things from and learn a lot of strategy. There's a lot of great war games they can learn from that they can learn strategy. But as a parent, I do recommend spending some time and just watching what they're learning in the game, being careful of the social environments that go around that and the strategies, because a lot of times there's no social community that dictates it. So they get very toxic, right? It's almost like the Wild West. So there's one form of engagement there. And to me, that's like removing the big knives. The other thing is there's 2 types of games that are developing now. You have these games, again, that are great to learn from. They're complex. So like my daughter, for example, plays one called Dreamlight Valley, which has to do with Mickey characters. It's called like a relaxing game. She cooks, she fishes, but it has projects and it has goals and she learns through it. So that's one reason why I like her playing that. But there's also these iPhone games or iPad games, which I call them just junk food for the soul. They're horrendous. They have no real purpose other than to create dopamine hits and create addiction. And you know what? As a parent, if you want to play Candy Crush for an hour or two, go nuts. Like, I get it. I've sat there waiting for something, and I don't play games on my phone anymore for this reason, but I would play just a mindless game. But understand it's just a mindless game. And its sole purpose is to get you addicted to it, to spend money to move on to the next one, to spend more money to move on to the next one. And this is a thing I would like to say. I don't let my daughter play those games because there's a difference between getting a dopamine hit while learning how to bake a recipe or fish with Goofy than just playing a game that's like a slot machine. It rewards non-winning winnings, and this whole design is to keep you addicted. That's a very unhealthy way of doing it. So I do encourage parents, play a role in the game. Don't just let it go willy-nilly, depending on how far you want to go with it. Understand what they're playing. And if they are playing a game that maybe you don't love, but it's what all their friends are playing, maybe you allow it to play with their friends, but don't allow them necessarily to always play with different online communities. Or we do need to participate and understand a little bit what's going on. It's just like, as an adult, if you want to watch an R-rated movie, go nuts, but I want to let my kid watch that right now. Same sort of concept I want to put into play there. I like that. Remove the big knives. That's a good chapter for a title, or a good book chapter title.
Many of my listeners are going to be parents, but they could also be grandparents, teachers, pastors, youth leaders. How can churches become places where young people experience genuine belonging, significance, and connection before they go searching somewhere else?
What a great question. I get to share something I've never got to share with anybody before. When I was a teenager, I brought a lot of kids to church. We actually ran a Bible study in my house, and I brought a lot of kids to church. And my dad shared with me, this one church in BC, he shared with me that all the members wanted a younger congregation. But then when they got us as teenagers, they didn't want our type of younger congregation, because saying this was always good, but we would swear, we wouldn't listen, we'd be rambunctious. I remember wanting a pool table in the basement of the church, and the church wouldn't go ahead and do it. It's not a teenager's job to accept us. They're still learning this. It's our job to accept them. So the current church that I go to now, they're fantastic. We do have rules and we have morality and we have guidelines that we would follow that are very controversial in the church today. We have boundaries that we may set or not set. Yet one of the things I love about my church is it doesn't matter where you are in life. We are going to love you as a person. And we have a core of acceptance in that. When we're looking at a church fulfilling those needs, again, we have to meet teenagers where they're at. When we were teenagers, we didn't want to be told not to wear a hat in church. Now, again, I understand it now as an adult, but sometimes there's some things that you just need to let go for the bigger picture, right? Yet we loved it when we got asked to participate, to usher, to be a part of things. That was great. We loved having a place to go in a community that didn't have a lot of community places. A church is going to be, one last thing I'll kind of end this part on before I carry on to answer your question. I listened to this amazing podcast of people who debated. And one time it was someone who grew up with faith who ended up losing their faith, and another person who grew up an atheist and ended up gaining faith. Now, they had great reasons, both of them. This guy had fantastic reasons why he no longer believed, and this person had amazing, scientifically grounded reasons why he did believe. Yet, when it came down to the core, the person who lost faith lost it because their church rejected them, and the person who gained faith gained it because their church accepted them. And once they were either accepted or rejected, then all the logical reasons came behind to back up that decision. So I encourage churches as they look at expanding youth programs. I'm not saying get rid of rules, but take the same sort of principles that we're talking here. Take the wide roads, high curbs. Allow them to be who they are. Allow them to explore what they want to explore. Learn with them. Don't just be there to teach them. Allow the participation of within the knowledge of it. Like what you're talking about, and it's something I kind of forgot about until recently. When you're talking about those kids baking, they're having participatory knowledge in it, and they're learning the essence of what it means to bake, but then also what it means to apply it to life. Come from curiosity and participatory within life, and prepare your congregation. Understand that there are cool things about saying you want a younger church, and it's going to have its own struggles, and you have to be ready for both of those.
Nathan, if there's one thing you hope every parent or grandparent remembers after reading your book before they walk into that next conversation with their son, grandson, daughter, or granddaughter, what would it be?
Come from curiosity. Remember, they're experiencing complex emotions for the first time. They're experiencing things that we have either learned to shut off or deal with in our lives that now seem trivial to us. Come from curiosity instead of judgment. Come from a position of trying to understand where they're at, because you can as a parent. They cannot understand you as a teenager. They say they can, they will fight you that they can, and at times they will seem so responsible that you think they can. They cannot. They have not participated enough in life to be able to understand your perspective, but you can understand theirs. And when you get invited into that world through curiosity, stay curious. The goal isn't to change them in that first conversation. The goal isn't even actually really to change them. The goal is to be invited back into their world, and through that, they will change. I'll leave with this because I get to say this, especially on this podcast. The law shows us that we need to change our hearts. The grace is what truly changes our hearts.
Amen.
And have that with your kids.
Absolutely. If this conversation resonated with you, you can learn more about Nathan and his book at syntheticecho.ca. Why won't he log off? And I will put that link. He has lots of practical guidance, encouragement, and resources designed to help parents better understand what is happening behind the screens. Nathan, thank you so much for joining me at the counter today. This has been a true pleasure.
I've absolutely loved this. I love man, this was very thought-provoking. I can't say how much I appreciate this conversation. Thank you for having me, Laura. And I love it. Put away the big knives.
Maybe today's conversation was never just about gaming. Maybe it was about something every human heart longs for: to belong, to matter, to grow, to be known. Children search for those things. Teenagers search for those things. And adults search for those things too. Perhaps before we ask, how do I get them off that screen, we might begin by asking, what are they finding there that they're struggling to find elsewhere? Because beneath every screen is still a human heart longing to belong. My friends, hear this blessing. May God give you eyes to see beneath the behavior. May He replace frustration with curiosity. May your home be a place where questions are welcomed and relationships grow stronger and grace is freely given. And may every child who sits at your table know they are already loved, already seen, and already belong. Pull up a chair until next time. Thank you for sitting at the counter with me today. If something in this conversation stayed with you, you might want to carry it gently into your day. No need to rush past it. And if you need a place to pause, reflect, or simply breathe, you can find more at bakingpastor.com. Until next time, take a breath, notice what's in front of you, and remember, you're always welcome here at the counter.